Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Logan with West Desert Wheeler. We just got out here. It is early morning because today it's supposed to be about 108 degrees. I'm trying to beat the heat for you guys. Topic of today's video, the new Element Knightrunner. So this thing is absolutely a third-gen Tacoma that is not licensed. So what's really cool about the Element, this is the RTR truck and it's got IFS, so independent front suspension. Now, there is something special about this truck is the kid who owns it actually also had an Ecto, which is the gatekeeper with a plastic body, and he took his Ecto suspension and actually put the trailing arm setup on his Knightrunner here. So almost making a pre-runner out of his little Toyota here. And so he gets tons of travel out of the rear suspension here. So this is not a completely ready to run truck, but it's very close. It just has the gatekeeper suspension in the rear, which is kind of cool that you can swap them back and forth on the Element trucks. So he's got the independent front suspension as well as those trailing arms. So keep that in mind as we're driving around, as the performance may be a little bit different, but outside of that, we're gonna go have some fun with this truck. So I watched a review the other day of the independent front suspension versus solid axle swap, and he did a full breakdown on suspension and how much articulation you got versus contact patch, and that's all great, but honestly, I think the IFS is absolutely for kind of the style that you want. I don't think you would ever do this for any kind of performance gain. I think a solid axle just almost in every way beats it. But if you've got a third-gen Tacoma that you're trying to keep a little more realistic, like this, right out of the box, I think this is kind of the way to go. So yeah, like the real-life truck has independent front suspension, which is cool. So if you wanted to mimic real life, then yeah, get yourself some independent front suspension. Now the wheelbase on these trucks is a little bit longer than most. This is 12.8-inch wheelbase, so pretty long compared to 12.3. That little half-inch will make a big difference depending on the obstacle that you're on. As far as electronics are concerned, this one does have a Hobbywing Fusion in it, which is one of my favorite motor combos. However, they do have pretty low kV, meaning that the motor does not produce a lot of RPM per volt. So it's pretty slow, which I like for just kind of cruising around and making it look real. However, the owner of this actually wants to make it go a little bit faster because he's now got that independent suspension and the trailing arm out back. So he's gonna put a little bit faster system in it here pretty soon. So we got clearance on that IFS right there. That's a pretty good obstacle for that independent front suspension to straddle over. Probably would have been hitting the pumpkin on a solid axle truck. These little 155 general grabbers that come on this thing, struggling for traction just a little bit here, guys. And then of course it does have licensed DeMello off-road sliders and bumpers, which is pretty cool. That's a definite Toyota upgrade company. Off-road armor. So just another reason why this is absolutely a Tacoma. All right, now we can see what's going on. We got our slider fully planted on the ground over here. Just try not to fall down that ledge. All right, guys, we just gotta let her rip. Now this is the kind of terrain I think this truck really is the most fun in. It's just kind of like ledgy, small stuff where tire placement's kind of everything and you're just kind of wiggling your way through. Compared to some of my other crawlers where I might take them down some extreme trails, I don't think that this is the truck I would be grabbing to do that. Now this is not my truck, so I'm trying not to beat it up too bad here. But I also know that Wyatt does not hesitate to drive his trucks. There we go, got up and through. Got that DeMello bumper sliding along the rocks there. There we go, got it to come up and over that obstacle. Bellied out again. So with the small tires like this and long wheelbase, it's just like a real Tacoma where you're gonna belly out on a lot of stuff, depending on just what you're trying to pull off. So you might be able to see the little sway bar in there. He does run the sway bar with the trailing arm suspension because it's probably necessary on that style suspension. So one thing I do want to talk about is licensing. So I'm really not sure why Element did not license this truck completely from Toyota. But I would have to assume that Toyota is not easy to work with on licensing because there's really not many fully licensed Toyota products out there in the RC world. So I don't fully understand that. So unfortunately, that's just kind of not my side of the business. Taking a little bit of a tip there. But where things get really confusing is that there are option parts for this truck from Knight's Customs, which is why it's called the Knightrunner. So where I get really confused is that Knight Customs offers Tacoma branded grills and Toyota branded grills, yet Element themselves can't do it, or they're just trying to keep the cost on the truck down, which then it gets weird because you have a cheap truck that you have to buy upgrades for, which just would have been the more expensive truck. So why not just do that out of the box? However, Element does include the little rooftop tent and bed rack on the rear, which is easily removable with 4 body clips. And you got the DeMello off-road rear bumper with a little hitch receiver in there. That's pretty cool, actually. Looking good. So another example of why I think Toyota might be hard to work with for licensing is because RC 4-wheel drive also has blatantly obvious Toyota RCs that are not licensed Toyota products. So just a little confusing why they don't flat out license them. Like RC 4-wheel drive has what they call their Mojave truck, and it is definitely like a 1983 Toyota pickup. Or even the Marlin is not a licensed Toyota, it's just licensed under the Marlin name. It's doing pretty good here. It's lifting tires, but it climbed right up, didn't really struggle too much. We're going to push the side hill capability of this truck. It has independent front suspension as well as a sway bar in the rear, so I'm curious kind of how this thing handles being off camber. It does have that bed rack up top, so it's not like it's got a super low center of gravity. And I'm also running a pretty large battery pack in this, a 4,000 milliamp full-size battery pack, 3S power. This top front tire barely clinging on, and I've actually got to turn uphill just to get me lined up for where I'm trying to go. But it's hanging off right on the edge pretty good, and it never really looked like it was ready to tip over, but maybe it's just harder to read the independent front suspension. With solid front axle, you can kind of see when a tire is getting light. It starts leaning over and whatnot. I do love these Fusions for this application right here, just creeping along. Got that front end set down. And this is pushing the limits of the truck pretty hard. Like, this is absolutely not something you would do with the 3rd gen Tacoma. One equipped like this. Hopefully this DeMello bumper is going to save us. It did. All right. Grabbing the rear end, it's going to level us back out. Front tire is going to pull us out straight. Now we're real leaned over. This isn't looking good, guys. Yeah, we're about to lose it. So I do have a couple opinions on this body style release. I think that honestly it might have sold better if they went with a slightly older 2nd gen Tacoma. So like 2005 to 2011, I believe it is. Just anywhere in there, that body style truck. I think there are way more of them out there because they're just more affordable for a lot more people. Myself included, I have owned one of those trucks. And it's really popular in the off-road community. A lot of people are doing the camping style setups, the overland style as they like to call it. I think that release probably would have sold more trucks, especially if it was licensed. The 3rd gen Tacomas are great. There's quite a few of them out there now, but I just think more people have a personal connection with those older body style trucks just because they've been out longer. And like I said, they're a little more affordable right now than these 3rd gens are. Here we go, setting it down. It's on its belly. I got to rotate it. Get it back on its tires. Our rear bumper's hung up. Oh, that's close now. There we go, just had to get this thing throttled out to get it up that last hill. So this is where I think this truck really struggles when maybe a solid axle truck wouldn't. And that's kind of like navigating these little boulder sections. So I think this truck on the front end just has a lot less clearance with the IFS, which again, I think is really more of a style thing than a performance thing. I don't think I'm like really blowing anybody's minds that this is not an increase in performance, but I just think it makes them a lot more difficult to drive through stuff like this, which can be the challenge and the fun part. So depending on what you want, that might be exactly what you're after. It's just a little more of a challenge, a different driving experience than most solid axle RC crawlers. So it's pretty cool that the option is out there. Personally, I think solid axle swap Tacomas are cool, and I would rather have a solid axle swap on a 3rd gen looking Tacoma. Additionally, I don't really like the design of this IFS. I think it looks really weak. I just don't think you can push it that hard with that high strength of a servo before it will break. It just needs more of an A shape to the arm. Right now it's almost just kind of like straight out, and it needs a little more triangulation in the arm itself. I think that would really make it more rigid. But there you go, the old Knightrunner got through that section pretty much without too much problems. Just had to get your line right, and off she goes. So kind of in summary here, I think this is a very fun truck for the scale aspect with the independent front suspension. It's not going to be the highest performer, but you don't always have to have the highest performing truck to have fun with it. I think this one kind of falls into like leaf spring RC 4-wheel drive territory, where the fun of it is the challenge, not necessarily like how crazy of a line it can do. Although if you look at it right now, it's still plenty capable. It just kind of drags itself through a lot of the obstacles. Let's see if we can get this thing up and out of here. I'd actually be surprised if I could. So our front tire's starting to kind of fall off that ledge. Pretty dang good. That's a big ledge for this truck. So the performance is definitely still there. It's just that you have to drive it a little bit different than most solid axle trucks. Well, all right, guys, my name is Logan with West Desert Wheeler. One quick reminder, if you're working on your Element and you want to grab some upgrade parts for performance, check out Rock Pirates RC. These guys make a ton of awesome performance parts, so be sure to check out Rock Pirates RC. They will be linked down below, as well as some affiliate links where you can pick up the RTR truck and go get yourself a Knightrunner. Definitely a lot of fun. There is some performance to be had here, but definitely a little bit different driving experience out here on the rocks. Be sure to drop a comment down below what you think. I appreciate you guys for watching. We just crossed over 3,000 subscribers, so if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and jump in, and we will see you guys in the next one. Keep the rubber side down.